It would be great to know if you're a nurse or a doctor or a dietitian. Grace is a nurse. Nice to know, Grace. Good evening to everyone. Hello to everyone. Good day to everyone who has joined this session today. We have a midwife joining us. Great. Nurses, doctors, midwives. Really nice. Amazing. It's amazing that people from all professions have joined this class, because I'm sure you're all going to benefit from this session of OET All-Stars today. Nurse, great. Oh, we have many nurses and doctors in the session today. That's nice. Right, although writing is a profession-specific test, but today's session is going to be helpful for all of you, because we are going to majorly focus on the language that you use in your writing. So it's going to be beneficial for all of you who've joined the session. Great to know that many nurses have joined our session today, and doctors too, and midwives as well. Amazing. Right. So before we begin this session, let me introduce ourselves as Khaira Education to you. So as I mentioned, I'm Sabreet, the head trainer at Khaira Education. We are Asia's first premium preparation provider. We have been training all healthcare professionals, nurses, doctors, dietitians, pharmacists, and physiotherapists, and we provide both online as well as offline courses. And we are available on Instagram, Facebook, through WhatsApp. We are there on YouTube, and I have given all the information on your screen. You can reach out to us if you want affordable, pocket-friendly training to prepare for the test. Although the training is suitable for your pocket, but we give you the best training. There is no compromise there. And we ensure that we provide a wide range of courses so that they are feasible for you according to your time, as well as according to the amount of money that you can spend on your preparation. Great. It's really nice to see all of you. Amazing. Right. Hello to everyone who've just joined. Okay. So as you all already know, you must have seen the heading of this session. We'll be dealing with using a variety of sentences and letters. You all are writing letters for your writing subtest, and you are expected to produce a language which exhibits that you have good command over English language and that you can handle a variety of sentences in a variety of situations. So the session that we are having today is all about it. We are going to learn what are the different types of sentences that English language has, and in what kind of a situation do we use what type of a sentence. But before we learn that, I have a quick question for all of you. I'm going to give you a situation, and based on that, you will have a small set of case notes, just 2 pieces of information. And based on that, we'll be doing a task. So if we are all ready, let's just start the class and start the session. So here is the situation that I want you to first look at. Mr. Shaw lives in a retirement home and is returning after a knee replacement operation. The charge nurse who is writing this letter wants to tell the resident nurse about the patient's current condition. The resident nurse is responsible for his overall health and safety at the home, at the retirement home where the patient is going back. I would give you some time so that you can read the information about the situation that you have been given, and then I'll display the task. Okay, then let's see the set of case notes based on this. Right, so this is the information that you have in the case notes. There are 2 pieces. One is can ambulate independently. The other one is needs a walker when outdoors in the garden. It is in the note form because the case notes that you receive are never in complete sentences. This is how the information is given in the case notes. So one piece of information is can ambulate independently. The other one is needs a walker when outdoors. And here comes your question. So in this situation where you're writing to the resident nurse, where the patient is going back, and the resident nurse will be responsible for ensuring safety of the patient at that resident home, what type of a sentence are you going to use? A, Mr. Shaw is able to ambulate independently, but he still needs a walker when he's outdoors. B, although Mr. Shaw is able to ambulate independently, he needs a walker when he's outdoors. I would want you to type your responses in the chat. If you think in such a situation, option A is a good option, or you are going to write option A in your letter, type A. If you're going to write option B, type B. I am now getting responses. Panpan says B. Panga says B. Arvind says B. Gurjeet also says B. Penke says B. Nidhi also says B. I'll be waiting for your responses. Don't be afraid. We might be wrong. We might be correct. It's a session where we are going to learn. So it's just the beginning. It's good to have wrong answers. Raman says B. Neha says B. Nancy says B. Tasila says B. Great. Very good. Cecilia says B. Amazing. Blessing also says B. Oh, I think all of you have got the answer already. That's amazing. It's great that you all got the right answer, because yes, the right answer is option B. Although Mr. Shaw is able to ambulate independently. Oh, we have some A's as well in the chat. So yeah, let's now check the answer. The better choice is option B. Although Mr. Shaw is able to ambulate independently, he needs a walker when he's outdoors. But why are we choosing option B? The reason is that in this situation, if you see, the resident nurse, as was mentioned in the task or the situation, the resident nurse is responsible for providing care to the patient, or is responsible for taking care of the patient's safety. So, yes, the information about the current mobility of the patient is important for the recipient, but we want to highlight that although this is the situation that the patient is in, the focus is that he needs a walker when he's outdoors. And a walker is related to the safety of the patient when he's in the garden. Hence, the information about the walker is more important. And we use this sentence in which we highlight that he needs a walker when he's outdoors. So for all those who got option B, very well done. I'm very happy with your responses. Some of us chose option A. That's all right. We are going to learn why are we not going to choose option A in such a situation. So this is all the lesson is all about. We are going to find out the trick on how did we decide that option B is the correct option in this case, and why option A was not a better choice. But let me remind you that both option A and option B were grammatically correct. They were absolutely correct. There was no error at all in them as far as grammar is concerned. But both of them were different types of sentences. And one was more suitable in that situation as compared to the other one. So in this session, we are going to learn the trick that we need in order to decide what kind of a sentence is better in what kind of a situation. So if we are all ready, let's now jump into the grammatical aspect of learning. I know I'm going to bombard a number of grammatical items on you today. There are going to be many new terms that you learn in this session, but by the end of this session, you will be able to learn which type of a sentence is better to be used in a particular situation. So the first term that I'm going to introduce you to is a clause. You might have heard this when we were young kids learning English grammar. At that time, the teacher used to introduce words like a phrase, clause, and sentence to us. And that is what we are going back to. And that the word is clause. Now, what's a clause? First of all, it's a group of words. It would never be one word in isolation. It's going to be a group of words. Oh, I'm sorry, I just got a comment of no sound. If you can all hear me, could you send me a thumbs up probably in the comments so that I know that you are able to hear me? Because some of you mentioned that you're not able to hear me. Probably a thumbs up for me so that I know that you can hear me. Great, I got a thumbs up. Thank you. Right, so if you cannot hear me, let's get back to our term clause. So clause is a group of words. It's never going to be one word in isolation. It would be more than one word. So if it is more than one word, what all should it contain? It should always contain a verb and a number of other words in it. A clause can never be complete without a verb. For example, if I say on the terrace, in the cabin, on the table, are these clauses? No, because these phrases just I've mentioned, these group of words do not have a verb in them. So if they do not have a verb in them, they cannot be a clause. There can be many groups of words, but if they don't have any verb in them, they cannot be a clause. So we need to find out, when we need to find out what is a clause, we need to be sure that it needs to have a verb. Now let us see some examples of clauses. The first one is, Mrs. Mandolin broke her arm 3 days ago. Is it a clause? Yes, it is, because we have the verb broke in it. The second one says, Miss Susan responded well to the treatment. Is it a clause? Yes, it is, because it has the verb responded in it. The next one, although he lost his mobility. Is it a clause? Yes, it is, because we have the verb lost in it. And finally, where she was admitted for a hip replacement surgery. Is it a clause? Again, yes, because we have the verb phrase was admitted in it. So some of these clauses that I've written on screen may have complete meaning, may not have complete meaning, but it's important that they have a verb in them. So when I look at the first sentence, it says Mrs. Mandolin broke her arm 3 days ago. Do I understand what happened to Mrs. Mandolin? Do I have complete understanding of the situation of Mrs. Mandolin? Yes, I do. I understand that she broke her arm 3 days ago. But when I look at the third example, it says, although he lost his mobility. Do I know? Okay, so what happened? Although he lost his mobility, so what? So we do not have complete understanding or complete meaning there. So on one hand, we have a clause which has complete meaning, and on the other hand, we have a clause which does not have complete meaning. Does any of these make, is the second one a lesser clause? No, both of them are clauses, and both of them are absolutely grammatically correct clauses because they have a verb. Now, you might be thinking, why are we learning these clauses? Why are we learning this term clause? By the end of this session, you will have more idea about why we are learning about this. But just to ensure you that we are on the right track, these clauses are going to make different kinds of sentences. So it's important that we understand what these are. Now, can I request you all to type any of clauses of your choice, what you understand of a clause? We just discussed one. One has complete meaning in itself, one does not. So if you can write a group of words which has a verb in it, if I can request you to write your examples of clauses in the comment section, I would love to read them. Malik, you'll just get an idea slowly. I know in the beginning it can be a little tricky, but I want you to stick to it. Gradually you'll be able to understand. We learned that, Upendra. The next slide is all about it. I'll help you with the types of clauses that we have in English language. But before that, if I could request you to type your examples of clauses in the chat. It can be a clause which makes complete sense. It can be a clause which does not make complete sense. Although he's studying English, that's a very good example, Christine. Neha says he's writing a letter. So you're all using examples related to your situations. That's great. Teresa says, I attended the BLS exam last week. Great. Good examples coming in. Tasila says, my sister loves cold drinks. Your sister is very similar to my sister then. Gurjeet says, he's going for a walk. Great, good example. Rikala says, I'm a nurse. Correct. Enchante says, he referred a patient. Great. Constance says, he danced so well last night. She is graciously singing. Great. What to do? Correct. Mr. Henry met with an accident. Good. My teacher is dancing. The teacher is just teaching at the moment, not dancing yet. Patient fell down from bed. Very good examples. Thank you for giving the examples. These are wonderful examples, and all of you have got the idea of a clause very correctly. Very well done. I'm watching your class. Thank you. Thank you, Gopal, for watching the class. Great examples coming in. Right. So let's now answer Upendra's question. Now, when we saw the examples, some of them had complete meaning, while some of them did not. So the next slide is all about it. There are two types of clauses in English language. One are called independent clauses. The other one are dependent clause. Let's first look at the independent clause. Let's forget the dependent clause. What's an independent clause? An independent clause in a sentence is a clause in a sentence that would form a complete sentence by itself. What do we mean by that? It has complete meaning. Whenever you utter that clause, whenever you write that clause, it will have complete meaning, and you understand the situation that is being talked about in that clause when that clause is written or when that clause is uttered. For example, Mr. Windsor complained of severe pain in his chest. So when we read this sentence, do we get an idea on what's happening to Mr. Windsor? Yes, you do. You know that he complained of severe pain in his chest. The second example, Miss Sebastian has lost all sensation in her lower limbs. Do you understand the situation of Miss Sebastian when you read this sentence? Yes, we absolutely do. So, independent clauses, also called as main clause, is a clause which will be a group of words which will have a verb and a complete meaning in itself. You will be able to understand what is being talked about on reading or on listening to that clause. While in contrast, we have dependent clause, which is also called subordinate clause. But what is a dependent clause? It's a clause which cannot form a sentence on its own, which means it will not have complete meaning. To get complete meaning, it will have to depend on another clause. And what is that other clause that it will have to depend on? The independent clause. So when you listen to a dependent clause or when you read a dependent clause, you will not be able to understand the complete situation of the patient. You will not be able to understand what's happening to the patient because it does not give complete meaning. So in order to get complete meaning, the dependent clause will have to be attached to something, and it will have to be attached to another independent clause to find meaning. Now let's see some dependent clauses. One is, since paracetamol has been ineffective. So when you listen to this word, since paracetamol has been ineffective, you might think, okay, so what? What was done? If paracetamol was ineffective, what was given instead of it? You want to know that, but you don't get the answer on reading this dependent clause. The second one, if warm compression is required. So if warm compression is required, should it be given? Should it not be given? What do we do about it? So again, you do not understand it completely. So a dependent clause will never give complete meaning. It will never form a sentence on its own. It will need somebody else's support. And the independent clause is the clause that's going to provide that support. So let's quickly summarize whatever we learned here. An independent clause is a clause which will have complete meaning, while a dependent clause is a clause which will not have complete meaning. So let's see if we can identify dependent and independent clauses. I have a task for you. This is task number 1 on your screen. Here you have 2 clauses. You will will have to identify which one of these two is a dependent clause, which means which of these clauses does not have complete meaning in itself. Which one will require somebody else's support to get meaning? So the first sentence is, or the first clause is, my bad. A, because Miss Lionel has not responded well to chemotherapy and radiotherapy. B, Miss Lionel has been advised to try hormone therapy. Now, which one do you think has complete meaning and which one does not? So the one that does not have complete meaning is the dependent clause. So which one do you think is a dependent clause? Let's see the responses that you've been sending. A, very good. Pompon, Sane, Jueza, Naya, A. Princey says A. Shilpa says A. Tensi says A. Aman says A. Neha says A. Christine says A. Tina says A. Very good. A, dependent. B, independent. Good. Arvind says A. Kiss says A. Tasila says A. Jason says A. Very good. Hirusha says A. Amazing. Great. I'm sorry for this, in the noise that you might be hearing. My neighbors are just banging the wall. May says hey, A. Gopal says A. Nahid says A. Very nice. Amazing. All of you got the correct answer. Brilliant job done. Yes. Option A is a dependent clause, while the second one is an independent clause. Because when I listen to this clause, because Miss Lionel has not responded well to chemotherapy and radiotherapy, you would say, then what? So if she's not responded, because she's not responded, what do we do? While when we read the second clause given here, Miss Lionel has been advised to try hormone therapy. It has complete meaning in itself. It does not depend on something else. Amazing. I'm still receiving the responses. Very well done. All of you've got the correct answer. Good job. That makes me very happy. Right. Now that you've understood what is a clause, and you have also understood the types of clauses that we have in English language, dependent and independent, we move on to another term that I want you to be introduced to, and that is a conjunction. But why do we have to learn what's a conjunction? Because conjunction is going to help us in joining clauses. So how do we join these clauses? We join them with the help of conjunctions. And again, conjunctions, when we were little kids, we were introduced to this grammatical aspect. And we all know that conjunctions are linking words. They connect. They connect ideas, they connect sentences, they connect clauses, they connect words. So any number of things in English language, any grammatical unit, when one of them has to be joined to another, we join them with conjunctions. And you're all familiar with conjunctions. Probably you did not know that these were called conjunctions, but you've all been using them very clearly in your letters. And these are and, but, although, because, or, since, so. So you have been quite abundantly using them in your writing. It's just that you were not aware that these are called conjunctions. So these conjunctions, these linking words are used to join two clauses, be it independent clauses, be it independent and dependent clauses. All the joining will happen only with the help of these conjunctions. Now the conjunctions also have types. I know too many types we are learning today, but once you learn the types, it's going to be quite easy for you. So what are the types of conjunctions that we have in English language? Again, two. Coordinating conjunctions and subordinating conjunctions. Let's not think about subordinating conjunctions yet. Let's learn about coordinating conjunctions. Now, these conjunctions are used to join what type of clauses? These are used to join two or more items, like two independent clauses. What were independent clauses? Clauses which have complete meaning in themselves. Clauses which can turn out to be complete sentences by themselves. So when you join two independent clauses, we join them with coordinating conjunctions. So what are the examples of coordinating conjunctions? It can be and, it can be but, yet, so, or. Any of these can be used, and we join two independent clauses, two units which have complete meaning in themselves. On the other hand, we have subordinating conjunctions. Why do we use these? We use these conjunctions to join one independent clause and one dependent clause. Remember, we learned that dependent clause needs somebody's support in order to have complete meaning. So whose support are we providing? We are providing the support of independent clauses. And how are we providing that support? We are providing the support to dependent clauses by the use of subordinating conjunctions. So we join two independent clauses with coordinating conjunctions, one dependent clause with subordinating conjunction. And what are the examples of subordinating conjunctions? It can be because, I'm sorry for the typing error here, BECAUSE it would be, since, although, if, until, unless, all of these are subordinating conjunctions. So just let's quickly revise what we learned about conjunctions. They are used to join grammatical ideas, grammatical aspects in English language. There are two types: coordinating conjunctions, joining two independent clauses; subordinating conjunctions, joining one independent and one dependent clause. Again, I'm going to show you some more examples on how the joining happens. Let's look at the first on your left-hand side. Let's look at that. Independent clauses joined by coordinating conjunctions. Example, Mrs. Lynn's husband requested for her early discharge, but she refused to go home. So, just a second. I am sorry, just a second. My neighbors seem to be very constructive today. They are trying to, I guess, break the wall and come into the class. I am not sure why so much of a noise. I'm really sorry, Gopal says. Great. I'm glad, Gopal, that the class is being helpful for you. Right. Let's look at the example now. I'm sorry for the interruption here. Independent clauses joined with coordinating conjunction. Let's see the examples. Mrs. Lynn's husband requested for her early discharge, but she refused to go home. So Mrs. Lynn's husband requested for something, and in contrast, she herself wants something else. Probably she does not want to go home. Probably she thinks the husband is not going to provide care to her, but the husband wants to take her home, probably to save money. So Mrs. Lynn's husband requested for early discharge is one independent clause. She refused to go home is another independent clause. And two of them have complete meaning by themselves. And when we are joining these two, we are joining with the conjunction but. The second example, Martin's health has improved and he's eager to go home. So Martin's health has improved has complete meaning in itself, while he is eager to go home is again complete in itself. So when we are joining two clauses which have complete meaning in themselves, with the help of and, it becomes a coordinating conjunction joining two independent clauses. Let's now look into the right-hand side. A dependent clause and an independent clause being joined with subordinating conjunction. Since curative treatment is not an option for Mr. Nutt, he has accepted palliative care. Now, in this sentence, he has accepted palliative care makes complete sense, and we are able to understand what is being conveyed. But when we read, since curative treatment is not an option for Mr. Nutt, we think, okay, so if curative treatment is not an option, so what do we do? Which means that one dependent clause, which is written first, is being joined to another independent clause with the help of the conjunction since. The second example, Rosalind is being discharged to her daughter's care because she lacks the ability to manage her post-discharge requirements. Now, if you see the first half of this sentence, Rosalind is being discharged to her daughter's care. It makes complete sense in itself. But when we read because she lacks the ability to manage her post-discharge requirements, you would think, okay, so what do we do? If because she lacks the ability, so what can be done? So we are joining these two clauses, one independent and one dependent, with the conjunction because, which is a subordinating conjunction. Pompon, I'll give your answer about the comma. I am going to deal with it in today's class pretty soon. But before we move on to that, I have a task for you. I'm sorry, I am a taskmaster. I bring too many tasks for you in the class. So here is task number 2. Here you have 3 sentences. In all 3 sentences, a conjunction has been used to join either 2 independent clauses or 1 independent and 1 dependent clause. You will have to decide which one is connecting 2 independent clauses and which one is connecting an independent clause and a dependent clause. Let's look at the first sentence. Number 1, after undergoing all the required tests, Miss Leon requested for her discharge. In this sentence, what do you think? Are we joining 2 independent clauses or 1 independent and 1 dependent clause? Let's see your responses. In the first sentence, after undergoing all the required tests, Miss Leon requested for her discharge. A, they are connecting 2 independent clauses. B, they're connecting an independent and a dependent clause. What do you think? Anjali says B. Okay. Erin says B. All right. Let's see. Akwinder says B. Arvind says B. Okay, great. Let's see what others are typing. Nidhi says B. Okay, great. B, great. All of you did get the right answer for number 1. Yes, the conjunction after is joining 1 independent and 1 dependent clause. The first one is a dependent clause, and the second one, Miss Leon requested for her discharge, is an independent clause. Very well done. Gurjeet says B. Siddiqui says B. Farina says 1 independent and 1 dependent. Very good. Reena says B. Very good. Very good. All of you've got the right answer. Let's move on to the second one. Miss Macbeth's recovery from the surgery has been complicated, so she needs high-level nursing care. So what do you think? Are we joining 2 independent clauses? If yes, type A. If you think we're joining 1 independent and 1 dependent clause, type B. For the second question, everyone, I've received your responses for the first one. Thank you. Let's move on to the second one. Ponpon says A. Penki says A. Erin says A. Okay. You guys believe we are joining 2 independent clauses? Okay. Arvind says A. Rab says A. 1A. Okay. Ponpon says 2A. Right. Right. Great. Anjali says A. Raman says B. JS says A. Tensi says A. Right, most of you got it right for the second one as well. Because when we look at the second sentence, Miss Macbeth's recovery from the surgery has been complicated. Yes, it's an independent clause. She needs high-level nursing care. Yes. But how do we know these are 2 independent clauses joined with the coordinating conjunction? So, because we learned in the list that so is a coordinating conjunction. Third, Mr. Clark reported severe pain in the chest, and his blood pressure is remarkable. Let's move on to the third one. Third question, everyone. What do you think? In the third sentence, are we joining 2 independent clauses? 1 independent, 1 dependent? Type your responses for the third one now. Tamanna says A. Penki says third A. Erin says A. Very good. All of you, wonderful. Lovely. Right. Most of you are getting it correct. Kamanti says B. Anjali says A. Ari says A. Amazing. Right. Again, all of you got it right. It is, the answer is A. We are joining 2 independent clauses. Both of them have complete meaning in themselves. Both of them are independent clauses. Lovely work, everyone. You got all the right answers. So what have we learned till this point? We've learned what's a clause, what are the types of clauses, we've learned what's a conjunction, and what are the types of conjunctions. And we also learned which type of conjunction joins which type of clause, which types of clauses. So well done, amazing work, all of you. I'm still receiving responses and all of you have got it correct. Lovely. Why I started the session and why I started talking about conjunctions and clauses, because I wanted to come to this topic of discussion majorly for which we have come to the session today, and that's a sentence. And what's a sentence? Sentence, just like a clause, is a group of words. It needs to have a verb and it needs to have a complete meaning in itself. Unlike a clause, which may or may not have a complete meaning in itself. We learned independent and dependent clauses. So independent clauses had complete meaning while dependent clauses did not. So what's a sentence and how is it different from a clause? Unlike clauses, sentences need to have complete meaning. They are, again, a group of words, 1, 3 or more, or 5 or 7 or 8 or 10. The number can be any, but they need to have a verb in them, and they will always and always have complete meaning. It can never be that a clause, that a sentence does not have complete meaning in itself. They can be in the form of a question, an instruction, an exclamation, a statement. In any form they can be. Let's look at some examples. I mean, we have been talking to each other since the beginning of this class in sentences. So let's look at some examples of them. First one, how is Rosalind responding to the new medication regimen? This is a question. I want to know how is the response of the patient. Second, shift Miss Joy to pediatrics ward. This is an instruction. I'm instructing somebody to shift the patient to pediatrics. What a surgery. When I look at a surgery, let's say you're observing a surgery being performed and you're just amazed by the craft of the doctors and the nurses involved in the surgery. So you say, what a surgery. Mrs. Linden has been trying to conceive for the last 1 year, but her husband does not seem to be ready for her pregnancy. Again, a sentence. It has complete meaning in itself. So what's a sentence? It is a clause. Just like a clause, it will be a group of words with a verb, but it will always and always have a complete meaning in itself. Now, let's move on to the territory of sentences. Let's learn the types of sentences that are there in English language. The first one is simple. Second, complex. Third, compound. We are going to learn about each of them in detail. So let's begin with simple sentences. What's a simple sentence? A simple sentence, in other words, is an independent clause. It is a clause which has complete meaning in itself. And what is a clause? A clause is a group of words which has one verb or a verb phrase. So similarly, a simple sentence is a group of words which has one verb or a verb phrase. Let's look at some examples. Mrs. Ramalakshman has refused to undergo the procedure. Jeremy was admitted to the hospital with elevated blood pressure, chest pain, difficulty in breathing, and increased perspiration. Was the pain responding to the painkillers earlier? All of these sentences have one verb phrase and they have complete meaning in themselves. So these are simple sentences. One independent clause is equal to one simple sentence. Now let's see your responses. Why don't you write some of the examples in the chat so that we know that we have understood what a simple sentence is. Remember, you were all writing examples of clauses in the beginning of the class. I want you to write the examples of simple sentences in the chat box so that, in the comment section, so that we can learn a variety of sentences from each other. A simple sentence, everyone, it should have one verb phrase. It should have complete meaning in itself. Or in other words, it should be one independent clause. Christine says, Mr. and Mrs. Smith have diabetes. Good example. Shamia, all of them are simple sentences. I want you to write your example in the chat box, in the comment section. Let's see how many simple sentences do we find in the comment section. You might be wrong, you might be right, but it's better to write your sentence so that even if you're wrong, you can get corrected. Miss Nancy has had hypertension. Very good. He got up early in the morning. Correct. Mr. Smith made good progress after total hip replacement surgery. Lovely, Karuna. Mr. John wants discharged today. Adamant Mr. John, but good sentence. Rishpal says, Mr. X has had hypertension for the last 20 years. Wonderful. Anna was admitted to the facility. Oh, Anna was admitted to the facility. I have a friend, Anna. So I just read her name. Amazing. Correct sentences. Maria's health has improved. Lovely. Wonderful. Maltiti, I'm going home. I am going home. You need to have the subject. I'm going home. I don't know who is, right? She has suffered from hypertension. Yes, it's an independent clause and a simple sentence. Mr. Jackson was diagnosed with diabetes. Correct again. She was diagnosed with hematuria. Correct. Rishpal says, Mr. Jenny is being discharged today. Lovely sentences. All of you got it correct. These are all simple sentences. They have one independent clause, one verb phrase. She was diagnosed with cancer last month. Good. Mr. and Mrs. I guess that's what you're trying to write, case. Mr. and Mrs. Ramiz was discharged. Were. And the subject is plural, two of them, so were discharged. Now I'm attending grammar class. Yeah, it seems like a grammar class, Sheena. Correct. Blessing says Rachel drove to work. Correct. Andy has been admitted to hospital. She's been suffering from diabetes since 2019. Correct. Rabia has discharged from hospital. Uruz, it would be Rabia has been discharged from hospital. But yes, these are all simple sentences. Lovely examples, everyone. Great job. Right. Now that we know simple sentences, let's move on to the second one. Let's move on to what a complex sentence might be. The name seems to be complex, but now that you've learned independent and dependent clauses and the conjunctions, it's going to be very easy for you. What's a complex sentence? It's a sentence that's used to combine two ideas or two clauses, and these are joined with the help of a subordinating conjunction. And if you remember, subordinating conjunctions are used to join what two items? One independent and one dependent clause. So what's a complex sentence? A complex sentence is a sentence which will have at least one independent and one dependent clause being joined with a subordinating conjunction. Let's look at some examples. When his condition stabilized, Mr. Nutt was transferred to the medical ward. So which is the dependent clause? When his condition stabilized. I'm sorry for the spelling errors of stabilized again. My bad. It should be S-T-A, not S-A-T. Mr. Nutt was transferred to the medical ward is the independent clause. Administration of IV saline was stopped after Mr. Chongo had been well hydrated. So in this case, administration of IV saline was stopped is the independent clause. After Mr. Chongo had been well hydrated is the dependent clause. Because Miss Pittman was coughing up blood, it was imperative to rule out all abdominal abnormalities. So because Miss Pittman was coughing up blood, this is the dependent clause. It does not have complete meaning in itself. And then you have an independent clause. It was imperative to rule out all abdominal abnormalities. So whenever we have in a sentence one independent and one dependent clause joined with the help of a subordinating conjunction, we call it a complex sentence. Now, let's see your examples of complex sentences. Could you please type them in the chat? Oh, some of you have written more simple sentences. Lovely. Very good. Right. Now, let me see some complex sentences. I know this is going to take some time. You need to think. You need to join them. So that's okay. Take your time, but do type them out in the chat so that you can get them corrected. Christine says, Mrs. Smith has responded well to the treatment, although she had complications. Lovely. Very well done, Christine. Raman says, she has had diabetes and hypertension for last 3 years. But this is a simple sentence. It's a correct sentence, but it's a simple sentence, Raman. Ponpon says, after Mrs. Smith's surgery, she is feeling better. Great. Lovely sentence, Ponpon. It's a complex sentence. Let them all come in. Let me see them in the chat so that I can correct them. Uh-oh. Okay. Himanti says, patient kept with restraint because he has irritable behavior. The patient was kept in restraints, prepositional error, but yes, it's a complex sentence, Himanti. Live away says, when the doctor arrived, she was discharged from the hospital. Very good. It's a complex sentence. Lovely. Kiran says, Mr. X had a fall and his wife took him to the hospital. This would not be a complex sentence because both of them have complete meaning in themselves. Mr. Jam had diabetes, but he was never complying with the medication. This is again not a complex sentence. Do not forget, in complex sentences, we use subordinating conjunctions, no coordinating conjunction. Let me show you the list of subordinating conjunctions quickly. Yeah, we're going to use these one, everyone. These ones on your right hand side. I've displayed them on the screen. Isa, I'll answer your question towards the end of the session. Although he can do activities of daily living, he requires assistance with them. Good sentence, Rashpal. Anna says, after the doctor's review, she was admitted to the hospital. Correct. JS says she's suffering from hypertension but responded well to treatment. Correct. Absolutely correct. Let more sentences come in. She has been diagnosed with PRVT ward after treatment of postpartum hemorrhage. Makes sense. Although he's able to walk, he still needs assistance in showering. Correct. Absolutely correct sentences. Very well done, all of you. You have understood what are complex sentences. Lovely. And then let's move on to the final type of sentences in English language. They are called compound sentences. Now, what's a compound sentence? In compound sentence, just like complex sentences, we are going to join two related ideas, but we are going to join two independent clauses. In complex, we joined one independent and one dependent clause, but in compound sentences, we join one independent with another independent clause. So when we are joining two independent clauses, we call it a compound sentence. And how do we join? Okay, I'm still getting some complex sentences. They're all correct. Well done, everyone. And how do we join compound sentences? We join compound sentences with the help of a coordinating conjunction. Remember, and, so, but, yet, or, all of these will be helpful in joining two independent clauses. It can be two or more, but at least two independent clauses. Let's see some examples. In the meantime, I would want you to think of your examples and put them in the chat. First example, her staples are due to be removed on day 14, and until then, please ensure that the dressing remains intact and dry. So one independent clause is, her staples are due to be removed on day 14. The second independent clause is, please ensure that the dressing remains intact and dry, and they are being joined by the conjunction and. Her home is not set up for a worker, and her elderly husband will not be able to take care of her at home. So her home is not set up for a worker, one independent clause, elderly husband not being able to take care, another independent clause, and they are again being joined with and. Mr. Krishnan's condition has not improved enough for his discharge, but his wife has requested for it multiple times. So Mr. Krishnan's condition has not improved enough for his discharge, one independent clause, wife requested for it multiple times, another independent clause. So whenever you're joining two complete ideas, by that I mean two complete sentences, two independent clauses with the help of a coordinating conjunction, we call it a compound sentence. Now let's see your examples. Mr. Nutt has been discharged from the hospital, but he still needs assistance. That would be correct. Then we have, although Mr. Smith is able to ambulate, this one would be a complex sentence. She's been admitted to hospital after accident, but her condition is getting better. Good. NWE, that is a compound sentence. Well done. Madiha says, although he's taking, with although we always make complex sentences. So this one would be a complex, Madiha. Christine says, Mr. Smith has diabetes and Mrs. Smith has hypertension. Absolutely correct. That's a compound sentence. Shirley says, Mr. Smith had a full fall from bed, yet he refused for help. Yeah, that's again a compound sentence. Very well done. It seems like Mr. Smith is your favorite character from the case notes. You people love Mr. Smith's name. Miss Olivia is being discharged today, but she still requires assistance. Very good, Ipsha. Rishpal says, please ensure her compliance with medication as she has had diabetes and hypertension. Makes sense. But then this would be a complex sentence, Rishpal, as is subordinating conjunction. Ponpon says, Mrs. Smith's remaining staples were removed and her wound will remain exposed. Yes, that's a compound sentence. Kiran says, Mr. X had an X-ray. Mr. X had an X-ray. Amazing. For his broken leg, and the doctor advised him not to put weight on his leg. Correct. That's a compound sentence. He has had diabetes since 2019 and he is on hyperglycemic medication. Makes sense. Compound sentence. He was diagnosed with hypertension and was commenced on medication. Farzana, compound sentence. Very good. Gopal says, Mr. John got discharged today, but he needs follow-up after 5 days. Correct. Sheena says, Mr. Thomas is being transferred to your facility, but he requires, not in the past, so present, requires monitoring of blood sugar daily. Correct. A compound sentence again. She requires wound dressing until her wound heals. This would be a complex sentence. She has osteoporosis, however, she forgets to take medication. Yeah, that's a compound sentence. Very well done, all of you. This is amazing. So a simple sentence, one independent clause. Complex sentence, at least one independent, one dependent. A compound sentence, at least two independent clauses. Now that you've learned these three types of sentences, why don't you help me? I have an activity for you, task 4, everyone. In task 4, I have 3 sentences for you. You will have to tell me which one is a simple sentence, which one is a complex sentence, which one is a compound sentence. Take your time. For if you think the answer for the question A is simple, so you write A simple, B compound, C complex. So type your responses in the chat for task 4. Let's see if you got it all correct. Which one of these is a simple? Which one is a complex? Which one is a compound sentence? Let's see your responses. Let them flow in the comment box. Christine says B is a simple. Okay. Parmar says B simple. Okay, let's wait for others. You'll have to write for all. A is complex according to Joanne. Kiran says A simple. Okay. Tup says B simple. Tensi says B simple. Anna says A simple, B compound, C complex. Okay. Joanne says B simple. Aiza says A complex. Okay. Karuna says A compound, B simple. Okay, we have simple, complex, compound flowing in. Great. A simple, B complex, C compound. Okay, Rena says A complex. Saeed says A simple, B compound, C complex. Okay, Ramesh says A complex, B simple, C compound. Ponpon says B simple. Great, great, amazing. All of you doing great job here. It's so lovely to see that you've learned things so easily. Amazing. Right, let's now see what could be the answer. A is Bethany's symptoms have not improved despite regular visits by a community nurse. In this case, the subordinating conjunction is despite. And what type of a sentence is this? It's a complex sentence. All of you got it correct. Amazing. B. Physiotherapy, hydrotherapy, occupational therapy, and medications were commenced in the hospital. Here, it's an independent clause and just one of them. So it's a simple sentence. Amazing. Good job, everyone. You got this one correct too. C. On day 12, he started showing some improvement, but on day 16, there was rapid deterioration in his condition. And all of you got this one correct too. It's a compound sentence. So in A, we are joining an independent and a dependent clause. So it's a complex sentence. B has many items in the list, but just one verb phrase. So it's a simple sentence. C has two independent clauses. Hence, it's a compound sentence. Well done, everyone. You got lovely correct answers. Good job. You have already learned the difficult part of the lesson. So let's do a quick revision. We learned what's a clause. We learned two types of clauses, dependent and independent. We learned what are conjunctions. Then we learned what are the two types, subordinating, joining independent and dependent clause, coordinating, joining two dependent clauses, two or more. And then we learned what's a sentence, a group of words with a verb in it having complete meaning. And we learned what are the types of sentences and how they are formed. You have all learned it quite well. Moving on to some rules. And I remember some of you asking me about the comma rules in the beginning of the session. Here are the comma rules for you. Let's learn the comma rules in a complex sentence. In a complex sentence, a comma is put after the dependent clause if the dependent clause is written first and is followed by an independent clause. So the example is, as his condition started deteriorating. Now this is a dependent clause. It does not have complete meaning in itself. Then we put a comma and then we write the independent clause. Mr. Maydew decided to visit the clinic for a checkup. So in this sentence, I've written the dependent clause first, and then I've written the independent clause. Hence, I'll have to put a comma when my dependent clause ends. And what's the second rule? What if we write the independent clause first? Let's say if we inverse this sentence. Mr. Maydew decided to visit the clinic for a checkup as his condition started deteriorating. So if we write the dependent clause first, we put a comma. But what if we write the independent clause first in a sentence? If we write the independent clause first in a sentence, we do not put any comma in the sentence. It's only and only in a complex sentence that we write the dependent clause first. If we write the dependent clause first, we put a comma after it and then the independent clause. And if we write the independent clause first, then we do not put any comma. So these are the comma rules for complex sentences. How about comma rules in a compound sentence? In a compound sentence, when you're joining two independent clauses, you join them with a comma plus the conjunction. There will always be a comma before the conjunction. Ramipril was prescribed to manage the elevated pressure, comma, but Miss McQueen did not comply with the prescription. So whenever you write the independent clause first in a complex sentence, it should be followed by a comma, then the conjunction, coordinating conjunction, and then another independent clause. So, okay, before we come to the functions of sentences, just let's quickly revise the comma rules. If in a complex sentence you write the dependent clause, just after the dependent clause you put a comma. But if you write the independent clause first, no comma. While in a compound sentence, when you're joining two independent clauses, they need to be joined with the comma plus the conjunction and. I hope the comma rules are clear for all of us. If they are, you just put a thumbs up in the chat. Right, now let's learn what are the functions of these sentences and when do we use a simple sentence, when do we use a complex sentence, and when do we use a compound sentence. Ramesh says, ma'am, give a brief class on connectors as well. I'll make a note of it, Ramesh, and I'll try to bring it on in the next session that you have with Khaira Education. I'll definitely try that. Right. So when do we use a simple sentence? A simple sentence is used when you want to convey one idea, when there are not many ideas that you want to join together and you want to present them. When you don't do that, we use a simple sentence, just one idea being conveyed. When do we use a complex sentence? When we have two ideas in our mind, one of them is more important than the other. So one that is more important will be in the independent clause. One that is less important will be in the dependent clause. So in a complex sentence, you talk about two ideas. And when you're talking about two ideas, because there is one independent clause, one dependent clause. So if you are writing the independent clause, it should have more important idea. And when you're writing the dependent clause, it should have less important idea. So a complex sentence is used whenever you're trying to convey one more important and one less important idea. And when do we use compound sentences? Compound sentences are used when you're trying to convey two equally important ideas. Now, I want you to be taken to the first question that I asked you in the session. Let me just go back. Right. This one. Remember the first question of the chat? The session. A. Mr. Shaw is able to ambulate independently, but he still needs a walker when he is outdoors. Although Mr. Shaw is able to ambulate independently, he needs a walker when he's outdoors. And I told you that option B is more suitable here. Why? Because we wanted to give importance to the idea that a walker is needed when he's outdoors. Because the recipient, in this case, does want to know about the current ambulation of the patient. But more important information for the recipient is how can he or she protect the patient or support the patient or ensure the patient's safety. And for safety, he needs a walker. Hence, option B is the correct answer. And this is what I told you earlier. So when do we use which type of a sentence? This is the crux of the lesson that we had today. When we want to convey one idea, we use simple sentence. When we want to convey an idea that's more important and an idea that's less important, we use a complex sentence. And when we want to convey that all the ideas are equally important, we use a compound sentence. Now, where do we use a compound sentence and where do we use a complex sentence? A compound sentence is more important or should be used when you have similar ideas or when you are giving ideas in the letter or in a sentence, but the ideas are too many and you're making too many sentences, too many simple sentences for them. So in order to avoid writing too many sentences, you can join them, connect them with the help of coordinating conjunctions and make a compound sentence. While complex sentences are used when you want to highlight what's more important and you don't want to highlight something that's less important in your sentence. This is the difference between the two, and this is how you decide in what type of a situation, what type of a sentence is to be used. Now, how do you use the lesson that you have got today? How do you put it into practice? First of all, you have to read the letters that you've written till date. I'm sure many of you have already been practicing. Many of you are going to start your practice. So if you have already been practicing, pick up your letters and see the sentences that you've written and see the types of sentences that you have chosen and see if the meaning that you're trying to convey to the recipient has been conveyed or not. And if you are just starting to write letters, it's the beginning of your practice, or if you are already practicing, you can pick up any set of case notes, mark the relevant information, and then decide, can I connect these pieces of information together? How can I present the information? Should I connect this piece of history with this piece of current condition? If yes, how? Should I write a complex sentence or a compound sentence? Think about it. And finally, you practice using these types of sentences frequently in your writing so that you become the masters of the skill and so that you can use a variety of them in your writing. I hope that this session was helpful for all of you. If you have any questions related to the topics that we did today, you can drop in the question here. I'll be here for some time to listen to your questions. And any feedback that you would want to give for the session is also welcome. Any sessions that you expect from Khaira Education in the future, the writing sessions, I got to know that you want to learn about connectors. Any other suggestions are also welcome because we'll be seeing you frequently from now on. So I want to know what kind of lessons do you expect from us so that we can focus on those. And we can help you. Let us know. We are Khaira Education, Asia's first premium preparation provider. We offer online as well as offline classes, and we provide classes for all the healthcare professionals. These are affordable, pocket-friendly courses. Because we make it and we customize it according to your need. If you want to reach out to us on Instagram, we are with the name Khaira Edu. On Facebook, we are Khaira Education Private Limited. On WhatsApp, we have this number, and if you want to get in touch on phone, I have also provided the number. We hope to see you. We hope to listen from you. Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful response that you're all giving. Great. I'm glad that the session was helpful for all of you. I'm happy that the session helped you learn something. Thank you for the response. Thank you for the feedback, everyone. Any questions are also welcome, or if you need any sessions, any suggestions for the future sessions would also be welcome. We'll try to incorporate them in our sessions. Okay, Spring, noted. You want a session on tenses? I'll keep that in mind. Great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. Yes. Sani, it would depend. It would depend how much of a focus do you want to put on that word. If you want to, yes, days, D would be in capitals in that case. Otherwise, it can also be in lowercase. I'm glad that the session was great. Amazing. Thank you for the response. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this session. I'm happy to have helped you. I'll see you in future. Let me know if we can be of any help to you. Thank you very much for the blessings. Thank you, everyone. Sure, Aiza. So what I mentioned about the complex sentence, in a complex sentence, you use an independent and a dependent clause. So in the independent clause, you're going to put the idea which is more important. And in the dependent clause, you're going to put the idea that's less important. Great, Ramesh. I'm glad that the conjunctions were also helpful for you. Great, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the session. I'll take your leave now, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.